My name is Alison Winterroth, and I am a photographer in the Tampa, Florida area. I mainly shoot newborn babies and pregnant mothers and really young families in general, but mostly newborns and maternity sessions. And that's really where my heart is. I adore photographing and filming and working with these new families where everything in their life is totally changing. They are one day usually a family of two, and then all of a sudden the next day they're a family of three, and that third family member is the most demanding person they've ever met in their life. So I just really adore kind of seeing that transition where they're usually scared and then they meet this new baby and they're just so happy and excited and also overwhelmed and terrified. And it's just such a really interesting time in life to photograph, and I adore it. I started as a portrait photographer shooting only stills, and I kind of fell in love with video. I took a workshop on making lifestyle family films, and I do love lifestyle family films, but I really wanted to apply that to making little mini films and films in my studio. So I kind of set out to do that. And so pretty much now I am mainly portrait, but I do incorporate quite a bit of video into those sessions. So people mostly hire me for my portraits, but I end up giving them or selling them their portrait session with a video included with it. So a lot of times they're not hiring me for that, but they end up with it because once they see it, they love it. And video is kind of a new thing for people. They're not always sure what to do with it or whether they want it, but once they see it, they love it. There's nothing that can compare to it. So what I do is I usually end up making these little mini films during my sessions. And the way I have kind of figured out to do this, it doesn't add additional time to my sessions, which is kind of, I'm a very simple photographer. I try not to add a lot of props. My sessions don't go on a long amount of time. And so I really wanted to come up with something that would work for that style of shooting. I didn't want to be making a film that added an hour or 2 hours to my session. I wanted it to be done in conjunction. So basically, once I kind of got my workflow down, it just was easy from there. So you might be wondering what I mean by a mini film. Well, I'm going to go ahead and show you. This is an example of a mini film that I made a little bit ago, and this is one of my favorites. It kind of incorporates the time spent during the session and the time spent with the parents, so you can see what we kind of shot. Now, this is a film, and I know some of you have different internet connections, and sometimes with the streaming service it doesn't come across as smoothly as it does on my computer. So just keep in mind that that it might be a little choppy at times, but it should be pretty easy to see. I also wanted to let you know that this is being recorded, and you will get a link to the recording afterwards. So if for some reason you can't hear me, or if your internet isn't that great, you will get a link for later. So just so you know. Okay, we'll go ahead and we'll play the film, and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so I think you kind of get the idea of what I mean when I talk about a mini film. And the reason I love these little mini films is that they're quick and easy to film, and also they show those things that you can't necessarily capture in photographs, like the yawn, like the heaving breaths that those babies take. They're just so incredible for showing the full story, really. So what I found was a lot of people, once they know how to shoot video, they're not really sure how to incorporate it, and they're really not sure how to organize and keep everything in check. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, and we'll go ahead and answer questions at the end. So, okay, welcome. I'm so glad you're here with me. I'm going to give you some tips to combine video and stills together in your sessions. So this can be applied to any session, but I'm talking primarily about newborn and maternity sessions. But so the first thing that I found that worked was to have all of your video settings determined before your session. So that doesn't mean that you won't necessarily change them on the fly, like if your light changes or if you have to adjust something because of your settings. But it is good to know what you want it to be at before you get started. That way, you're not thinking, so you can really concentrate on the session itself, and you're not really thinking so much about the settings that need to happen at the session. So once I kind of determine my settings, on my camera there is a way to save the settings. I have a Nikon D750, and it allows me to switch back and forth from stills and videos quite easily. But not all cameras really allow you to do that. So I would look in your manual and see what the capabilities of your specific camera are. And if it doesn't allow you to switch back and forth and save those settings, then you may want to consider making those settings a special button on your camera. So what a lot of times cameras will allow you to do is like if you're doing back button focusing, you can save a button so that you're focusing with that button instead of doing what it normally would do. So what you can do is set those settings on the back of your camera for when you go into video mode, then it will actually go directly to those specific settings. So I have found that sometimes that really helps people determine, helps people really get those settings set up. Now, you may have to change them a little bit when you do switch, like if you have to change your aperture or whatever, but it helps you get into that. You're not changing everything from the very beginning. But you do need to look at your camera's manual and really figure out if your camera allows you to do that. So first thing, have all your video settings determined before your session. The next thing is to create an easy way to switch between the two while shooting, which is kind of what I just covered. It's just a matter of making sure that you have all of those settings set up so that when you go back and forth from stills to video, you're not thinking about the settings, you're just thinking about the poses that you're capturing, the sides, and everything like that. So get those settings and figure out how to switch between the two. And you can do that before your session even starts. Take some time. You'll be very happy in the end that you did. Okay, so when the session actually starts, the way that I switch between the two is I take several photographs and then I take several video clips. So what that means is I get the baby into a pose that I want them to be in. So let's say it's the pose pictured here. Baby's on his back. We have a swaddle around him. He has his arms up around his head. What I do is I take 3 or 4 shots from different angles of that pose. I always do the still photographs first because in this instance, we want baby to be still. So we want baby to be unmoving for the photographs because we don't want a hand halfway up in the air. We don't want them in between a yawn. You want them to be still for the most part in these pictures. For the video, we do want some movement because movement creates a more dynamic video. So when we go to do the video, it's okay if baby moves a little bit. So the thing is if they're in a specific pose and you don't want them to move, well, take the photograph first, then take the video clips. So what I would do in this instance here is I would take one photograph from above, and then I would go to the window side and take one photograph from the window side of like the torso up, so it's like the side of the baby's face. And then I would take one of just their head up and just create a couple of different angles. And then I would take one from the shadowed side. So in this picture, you can see that I'm currently taking the picture from the shadow side. Then I would go back to my initial starting position and take video clips of each one of those poses. So we would take a full video clip of the baby's whole body. Then I would take some of their face. Then I would take a couple of their of the side of their face from the window side and from the shadow side. So I'm basically getting a lot of variety, but I'm not moving the baby any until I'm ready to change their pose. So I get them in a pose, I take the photographs first, then I take the videos, and that really allows you to switch really easily between the two, and it allows you to get a lot of variety without having to move the baby. If you don't know that, every time you move a baby, they have an ability to wake up, and so I'm trying to get as much as I possibly can before they wake up. Maternity is a little easier because you have an adult usually, and they're not necessarily moving around a lot, so they can hold that pose a little longer. But just think about it in terms that you want stillness for photographs and movement for video. So usually if I'm photographing a pregnant mom, I'll have her hold still, and then when I go to take the video, I'll ask her to just move her hand gently, rub it on her belly, give me a smile, just do something to get her to look a little bit, you know, give me some movement and some interest in the video. And I'm just taking short little video clips, 3 to 5 second video clips, because when I go to edit, I'm really only using 1, 2, or 3 seconds, so you don't need a lot of extra time. The only change would be if baby does something. So if baby gives a big yawn or they stretch, I keep recording through the entire movement. I don't cut it off in the middle. So if they're going to yawn and I'm filming, I'll let them start at the very beginning. They'll yawn the whole time, even if it's a 5 or a 10-second yawn, and then I'll stop recording after they have finished their movement. That way you make sure that you're not cutting your viewer off in the middle. So, okay, so we're easily switching back and forth. We're jumping between the two really easily. The other thing is I always make sure that I get correct white balance or take a photo of my photo checker from the my color checker for later. So I usually take a photo of it. This is in Lightroom. I have used this color checker in Lightroom for the photos, and then I also take a little video of it for when I'm editing my videos. And really that saves me so much time because generally you'd want to have correct white balance when you're shooting, and that's super important. But if you have to make adjustments later, it really helps to have that checker so you can really get that accurate white balance. So it does save me a ton of time, and if you get it done at the very beginning, then you don't have to worry about it for the rest of the session. Okay, so this is the last part of shooting the two together. Practice. Practice, 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 practice. That's all I can say is that anytime someone comes to me and they're a little frustrated, it's probably because they just haven't practiced enough. And it takes time to remember how to switch back and forth, to get that muscle memory to switch between the two without having to look and think about it. The only way you're going to do that is if you just do it over and over and over again. So that means that you have to practice on a flower in your home, or you have to practice on your children, or you have to practice on a tree blowing in the wind, whatever it takes. Practice taking a photograph, switch to video, and set those settings for video, and then switch back again. It just takes a lot of practice. And once you get that practice in, then it really gets easier and easier and easier. And now I barely have to think about it at all, just like when you started photography. Okay, so for a mini film, I'm trying to end up with about 30 to 50 clips for a 30-second to a 1-minute film. So basically, generally with a newborn session, I'll end up with about 250 photographs and 30 to 50 clips. And my session is done in about an hour and a half to 2 hours if the baby's kind of a little bit awake throughout. So you can get a fair amount without having to add a whole bunch of time to your session. It's really easy to do. You just have to get used to changing those settings. So the most important thing is to make sure you get a lot of variety. The times when I haven't been able to make a film that is long enough is basically usually when I just haven't gotten enough variety from my clips, where that means I'm taking the same clip over and over and over again, or the same angle over and over again. It just doesn't make sense to keep doing the same thing. So I usually take a couple to make sure I have good focus, but then I move on to a different angle. That way you can get more interest in it. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about organization, because really we're nothing if we don't have some organization to our sessions. And I find that the hardest part of this is just keeping everything organized and knowing what step to do next. So for me, the way that I start is I create a folder on my on an external hard drive, and I keep them organized by date, last name, and session type. So for instance, the one that we're going to talk about today, this is Elise, who is actually my daughter, and we went out and we shot some little video of her and my son at the at a lake. And my son is in it, but he's wild and he's only in a couple shots, so I named it after her. But anyway, this allows me to really keep myself organized, so I know what's in everything and I know where everything is when I need to find it. So what I do is I make that folder, and then I take I use a card reader and I copy all the files from my card reader to my hard drive. So that way I have everything on my card as well as on my hard drive. I do not delete the contents of my card until I have finished the video and delivered the final product. So, or maybe not delivered, but at least uploaded it to, so if I share my videos in Vimeo, I don't delete the card until I've uploaded that film in Vimeo, so that it is basically backed up on my hard drive. It's also backed up online. So, and then I also have it on the card, so it's backed up there. Once I have that backed up, then I don't have to worry about if I were to lose the files or anything. I also have backup services, but this, you know, sometimes those are slow, and, you know, it just doesn't make sense to only rely on that. So I back these up as much as possible. So now all those files are in the folder. I import the photographs into Lightroom. So as you can see, I have unchecked the video files. So you see the little video here. I do not color correct or color grade in Lightroom. I find it to be a little bit cumbersome, and it just doesn't do what I want it to do. I find it easier to color correct and color grade in Premiere Pro. Premiere Pro is my favorite system. So that's what I use it for. So I'm only importing the pictures. So I didn't take many pictures at this session. This was just us kind of playing around. But I imported them, I edited them, and then what I do is I star the ones that I'm going to edit. So you can see I have 5-starred all the images at the bottom. There were a lot more images, but these were just the ones that I ended up editing at the end. And those, those are the ones that made the cut for me, per se. So you can see in Lightroom, these are all the images that I took, which isn't a ton for me, but then these are the ones that ended up with my final editing final. And really, like I said, it was more of a video session, but I always like to take some photographs with my stills. So what I do is I go through, I 5-star everything that I want to edit. So what I do is I go through really and I check the color, I check the exposure. So this one was a little overexposed. And then I zoom into it. I make sure that it has good focus. It's pretty unusual to have two of my children smiling and looking at me, even though these are kind of their fake smiles. But I check the focus, and then I star the ones that I want to use. And then when I go to edit, I will click the rated. I'll filter them by the fact that they're rated, and then it only shows me the ones that I starred. Then I only have to concentrate on editing those. Of the ones that I starred, I only ended up editing 5 of them. There were 3 of them that they were just too repetitive, and I didn't end up liking them. So that's kind of where I went. So then at the end, I export my files and I save them in the same folder in which the originals are. So I create a print folder and I make a web folder and I export all those files in web and in print. And that way I can upload them for if I want to share them online, or if I want to print them, at my printer, then I have those ready to go. Then immediately after that, I upload those. I use ShootProof, so I upload all the files to ShootProof, so I have galleries of each image, each session. So if my hard drive crashed 5 minutes after I finished them, then they would be uploaded to ShootProof or an online sharing, service, so that you have those files backed up. Okay, so the next thing I do is, so I've finished the prints. The next thing I do is I'm ready to edit my film. And the film, basically, I create and I put it in the exact same folder that I have the prints and the raw files and the raw video files. Everything is in that exact same folder. So 6 months from now, I just have to remember what month it was in, and then I can easily go back and say, oh, Elise portrait session where we were at the lake, this is what we did. So I create this new Premiere project and Premiere Pro project, and I save it in the same folder with the originals. So then I import my pictures into the project's timeline. So you can see at the bottom left, you can see all my imported video files, and now I'm ready to start editing. The next thing I do is I just drag over one of my video files. It's the one that I use the color checker with, and I correct my color. So I adjust my contrast, I adjust my I adjust everything over in these panels, and it allows me to really correct the color that I want to correct. And then I make a preset so that I can easily come back to what I have done. So what I usually do is make a preset for each different area of where I'm working. So for instance, if I go if we're at the lake in 1 minute and then another minute we're in the trees, then I make sure that I make a preset for both with the color editing that applies to both of them. And I'll show you what I mean by that in just a minute. So I save a preset, I save it for the session itself, and then I go in and I do my editing to my clips. So in this film, we're going to go over to Premiere here. In this film, you can see I started in the lake area with the jasmine, and then we went to the lake and I got a little closer. And then finally, I'm moving, it's starting to get darker in the sunset. We moved to this little dirt road where I started shooting some really pretty backlight images. And so what I do is I make an adjustment layer with the preset that I want to use. So basically, once we've changed scenes here, you can see that instead of being so bright, it's starting to get dark. This allows me to control the way the color looks easier. So I'm only dealing with this adjustment layer. And I can change anything that I want to change. But then if the individual clip, like for instance, this clip is a little bit orange looking. Oops, excuse me. This clip is a little orange looking, then I can go in and adjust it individually on the clip, but I'm not having to change every single clip if I do that. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. But so then for each scene, I make a new adjustment layer and change all of those clips so that they match. And then that way everything looks good together, but you're changing the scene, because if you were to apply the same preset to this, let me show you what that would look like. It gets way too warm and way too bright, which I don't want for that. It doesn't match the it doesn't match the film that we're trying to make. So I need to make a new preset so that that actually works a little better for the film. So the adjustment layer is the way that I do that, and I keep that all organized. And then if I was putting in title stills, I would put the title stills up above. Okay, so everything always lives in the same folder. So if I can't stress that enough, it's that everything lives in the exact same space. I'm not having to search through different folders. I'm not having to think, well, where did I put the film? Where did I do this? Where did I do that? Everything. So when I go to export the film, it'll live in the same space so I can upload it. And that way I'm never searching. I'm never feeling disorganized. Everything is just in its place. And I wanted to just show you, this is the inside of a folder that, this is a client session. So you can see I have the Premiere Pro file here. I have my Facebook files. This is their album, so I had that. This is the pre-edit, so like when I do some final touches in Photoshop. This is their prints. These are the express proofs, their slideshow. I even made a birth announcement for them, and their video clips. And then it's been a while, so I actually have deleted their raw files. I happen to do that after a certain amount of time. If they've already made their order and they've purchased all the digital files, then I do get rid of the raw files. But you can see their newborn film is right in here, and it's all set to go. So that is everything that I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to say, if you want to learn more about me, you can find me at AlisonWinterroth.com. Or if you want to learn more from me, I have a workshop with Clickin' Moms. It's called Bellies to Babies, and we talk all about photographing newborn babies, photographing pregnant moms, and everything that comes with that. We talk a lot about video, and we have a lot of video included in there of me shooting, and it's a really great workshop. So if you're interested, feel free to check it out. So I'd love to hear if you have any questions, and I'd love to answer some questions if you have any. So feel free to throw them at me, and hopefully I can answer them. So I would love to hear any if you have them. Anybody out there have any questions for me? Let's see. I don't see any questions yet. Oh, okay. Hi, Michelle. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I actually do school portraits, and I do them in a really simple, a simple way. They're called fine art school portraits, and I actually learned from this wonderful catalog. It's called the Unpacked Catalog. I had a little blank there, and I absolutely adore doing school portraits. I do them really simply. I only do a couple schools a year because they're a lot of work, and they're you know, they're a lot of fun, but they're very exhausting and they take a lot of time. So, but I do love them, and I just do them very simple on a black backdrop or a white backdrop, and I really try and capture those children's emotions. For that, I'm using my Sigma 35 millimeter. So anyone else have any other questions? Hopefully I gave you some good information about how to organize, and Oh, okay. Hi, Richard. I love my Nikon D750, and there's a big reason for that. And I think like the main reason is that articulating screen that it has. It has a screen that pops up and it flips down at me. So I can be holding the camera up over my head, filming, and because there's an articulating screen, I can see exactly what I'm filming. I can see exactly what I'm focusing on, and it's amazing. I don't know if you're Nikon or Canon. I know Canons are known for being better with video than Nikons, but I've been really happy with the color and the focusing and the screen of my Nikon D750. Hi. Um, So the way that I switch is I have a little, there's a setting on my camera that allows me to change my button from stills to video. So it basically saves all my settings. Um, some people's cameras do not allow them to do that. So you do need to check your manual and see. So if your camera doesn't allow you to save those settings, so basically at the beginning of the session, I save all my settings um, on my camera so that when I switch back and forth, I'm not adjusting everything. It basically just, when I put it on movie mode, it already has those settings saved. When I put it on photography mode, it has all those settings saved, and they're saved separately. If your camera does not allow you to do that, then a lot of cameras will allow you to save it on a button on the back of the camera. So just like you would change a button so that you could use it for back button focusing, like if there wasn't a dedicated button for it, there is a way to save your video settings on a button on the back. So you would turn it into movie mode, press that button, and it would automatically have those settings set up for you. Now, you may have to change them a little bit. Um, you you might have to change them a little bit, but they should be your general basic settings. You shouldn't have to change so much that you're going back and forth between the two. So I know children are hard. I totally get it. So there are going to be times when you're going to have parts of your video more in focus and not in focus, and I think it's okay to embrace that. You're not making a movie. And even in movies, you can see if you watch what they do, they focus in and they focus out, they move through the focus. Sometimes people come into focus and some people come out of focus. So I think it's okay to embrace a little bit of that. It's definitely easier to work on a child that is distracted by something. So if I'm filming children, I'll give them something to play with so I can actually film, like especially if I'm trying to do macro shots of like their eyelashes or something, it helps if they have something to pay attention to, you know, so that they're not uh, squirming away. And even then, you know, sometimes I just play games with them. So if it's a child and I'm trying, like let's say I'm trying to embrace the movement, I'll find my focus where I want it to be, and I'll stay in the same place, and then I'll just let the child run back and forth or do the movements that they want to do. So then that way I'm really making sure that I'm getting that movement, which you kind of want for films anyway. You want them to be moving. You don't want them to be totally still. So it does take practice, and it definitely can be frustrating, and I get that for sure, Danny. Hi, Joan. Okay, so when a baby is crying, I do film that, but I do not, in my studio, I don't let children cry, and I don't let babies cry. If a baby's crying, it means they need something, in my opinion. So I usually give them to mom for feeding or for cuddling or, you know, whatever they need. But to keep a baby from crying a little bit, I have some tricks, and one thing I would do is I would put on white noise. I also keep the room really warm, like uncomfortably warm. 85 degrees is really good to keep a baby nice and warm. If you can remember, they're in a mom's belly for 9 months at 96 degrees. And so when they come out, even 85 degrees is kind of chilly. So it takes them a while to get used to it. So you do want to keep them really warm. Also, they can't regulate their body temperature as much, so you need to make sure that they're warm enough. So if you keep it at 75, you could be chilling that baby down a little bit. So if a baby is really crying, I swaddle them. So if I'm having a hard time getting them to settle, I swaddle them, or I just give them to mom for feeding. And so sometimes there's cases where those sessions do take a little bit longer, but you know, that's just the way it is with babies sometimes. These are good questions. Thank you guys so much. Okay, so my go-to props for shooting babies are, well, I keep things pretty simple. So my go-to props for shooting babies are, first of all, I always have to have a bean bag. I use a Shoot Baby bean bag, and that allows me to shoot from above and all the way around. I love blankets with stretch. So anything that has some stretch to it that I can stretch over the bean bag is really important to me. So I find that something that doesn't wrinkle really easily is really nice too. And then a really nice swaddle that allows the baby to be tucked in really tight. If you can see in this picture, the swaddle was really tucked around him to, actually it was a she, to keep her really nice and swaddled up tight. So those are my favorite things. I do keep some headbands on in stock on hand, so that if parents want to use headbands for a girl, or even possibly a cap for a boy, but I usually ask parents if they want something in particular, then they should bring it themselves. The only other prop that I use a lot is flowers. I use a lot of flowers in my newborn sessions, and so I try and incorporate those. And so whatever's in season, I usually just go to a florist and have her give me something that's cool, and I use it. So those are my props. Any other questions? I do not use music. I usually use white noise. I have music out in the main room where the parents are sitting, or sometimes the mom's in the room with me and the dad's out in the main room. So I usually have music on out there. But I have seen newborn photographers that use music, and it's really, really soothing, nice music, and they do really well with it. I just had never, I like my white noise. I feel like it sounds like the mom's heartbeat, and the mom, it's what the baby's been hearing for a long time, so it kind of helps them settle a little bit. Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. I had a really good time. Thanks for hitting me with some questions. I'm excited that you guys got some out of it, and I hope that if you have any questions, you can email me at info@AlisonWinterroth.com. You can see me at AlisonWinterroth.com, or you can check out my website, check out my workshop called Bellies to Babies with Click and Moms and Click Photo School. And don't forget that this recording will be emailed to everyone tomorrow. It is recorded, so you have a copy of it if you were editing in the background or you got distracted by your 3-year-old. I totally get it. That happens to me all the time. So thank you so much for having me, and I had a really great time.